Welcome, everyone. Welcome to On Air with Rocketium. We are here today with Alexandra Leite. And thanks so much, Alexandra, for taking the time today. You have decades of experience across creative operations, and I'm sure our listeners will be very happy to hear from you, get some tips and tricks, and hopefully do better in their own operations, right? So maybe we can start a little bit with introductions. If you want to walk us through your experience, your exciting journey through the years.
Thanks, Karam. I think you and I met a week ago, and I feel like I've already known you for a long time. I don't know why anyone would be interested in creative operations, which I always joke that is such a boring topic, and I don't even know how did I get here. I started my career as a journalist in Brazil on a time that the internet was just starting, and I did a career change very quickly. And I remember at that time, my friends said, "You're such a good journalist and you are wasting your career on this thing, the internet, which is going to be a fad. You shouldn't do that."
Okay,
Well, they were all wrong. And that path took me to Yahoo when they first launched in Brazil. I was the first editor for the Yahoo front page. This is a very different time
nice.
when there was no Google, no Facebook, no Instagram. From there,
Yeah,
New York, advertising, and now creative operations.
very, very cool. And in your current role as VP of Creative Operations, do you just want to walk us through what your day to day looks like, what your team looks like?
I would say that the day to day is very full with fires. It's very full with urgent things. And what I try to do as long term is what are the big impact things I could be doing at the organization so that I'm not just consumed by the fires. So creative operations, I think, is successful when you can find a balance between those two things, separating what's important from what's urgent, and then balancing yourself and your team against those priorities.
Amazing. I think this is one of the best answers I've heard for creative operations because everyone talks about the process, but I think the way to think about it as a balance between how to fight fires, because obviously you are in the critical path of business and you will always have requests coming in your way, but how to balance that with certain long-term initiatives so that you can partner with the business on the right things. I think that's a perfect sort of answer. So thanks for that. And when you think of the creative ops as an organization that is expected to partner with business, especially marketing and brand teams.
I do not think it exists any high performance creative team in a high performance marketing organization without a high performance creative operations team. The
Okay,
creative operations team is the engine and the enabler of those two other areas. I
okay,
do put myself and my team where we are co drivers for creative excellence. And how we partner with marketing will vary on how the company is set up. At least in my organization, we are certainly one of the building blocks of marketing, and we are supposed to act as bridges between consumer marketing, product marketing, and our entire creative team. If you had to ask, what do you mean to bridge? To bridge means different things in different touch points of a program lifecycle. I would say that one of the most important moments is the briefing time, where a marketer is looking at consumer insights, looking at her product positioning, and coming to creative. The ops person has a huge role on making sure that that brief is very relevant and inspirational for a creative team. So when we are behind closed doors, we can be the voice of marketing in the room and helping explain why the hook is there. Why does marketing believe that's a problem? What are the benefits of that product we want to market? So we are that first step on making a creative team get it and then respond to that brief the right way.
when you think of the creative operations process, right? and you have built an able team, and you have done this across different sets of roles and principles across your organization. What would you say are certain areas of innovation that you have done, right? Obviously, you have learned through the years, and you have optimized the process and teams as you've gone along through different organizations. If you had to say that, okay, these are certain innovations that we have done through the years, a few examples of that.
Oh, we have so many examples. I might be no, I don't think I am unique, but I am one of those creative operations professionals that don't believe so much in the power of process. I
Okay,
believe in the power of people working together to make something. So I am very process oriented on creating the guidelines, and I will break that process if I believe the work can benefit from that process disruption. Example, today we review each one of our campaigns with our creative directors multiple times before sending it to our CMO and then to our brand president. When I'm
okay,
working on a high level campaign in China that requires a much faster go to market approach than a global campaign that will take more than a year. In China, I could be working on a campaign that I have only 6 months. The first thing I do is to break my process. I will
okay,
take all those meetings, I will revisit all my decision rights, and it potentially means we are sending work to our brand president on WeChat, on a text message, rather than holding a meeting, and we move much faster. So, do I consider that an innovation in approach? Certainly. It's a process that can flex accordingly on where we are in the problem we are trying to solve. But of course, having the guidelines and the governance is what allows me to change that process. And of course, innovate. You can't talk about innovation without saying about all the experimentations that the whole creative
okay.
community is making at the moment with AI, with automation, with rethinking the old norms on how you get to a final product.
Got it. And on that note, when it comes to AI, generative AI, are there any specific initiatives you all are thinking about? Is there something that you have seen work that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I love how decentralized everything feels. If you
Okay,
think about any innovation that happened in creative in the last couple of years, things become a lot top down, meaning one day your CIO or your president said, we got to be responsive, we got to be on mobile, we got to do this. And AI, they were all surprised. Our creatives started using it. They didn't ask for
okay,
permission. They didn't say, let's change in process. They didn't ask us for anything. You woke up one day and an image that would have taken a designer days to do, they were prompting on Mid Journey. They were bringing
okay,
it to you. So there is a feeling of grassroots coming up that I find it extremely exciting. So our approach to it has been let's all be experimenting and seeing
okay.
what works. Later, we'll bring more governance to it. But right now, I think we're letting our teams uh, play and discover the potentials of it.
And that's amazing because on one side, you're talking about governance. On the other side, it's about enabling your teams to actually run those experiments so that whatever is working, that can get into the governance framework, and then continuously you can improve the process.
Absolutely. I don't think it is top down anymore. I do not think all the executives in a company are going to be able to keep up with the technologies that are flourishing every day. So
For
if you
sure.
have both, you do have leadership providing what are going to be the enterprise solutions we'll focus on, but you let your creative team drive a little bit because they will be the ones um, almost like pushing the new softwares to get to where they want their ideas to be. And you have both, in the same ecosystem, we can, explore new frontiers of creative that we don't know yet.
And when it comes to this, and this is one of my favorite questions, which is design is so personal to a brand, right? And there are so many people that are involved in this process of almost voicing the brand's ethos. How do you go about the decision making process? Who all get involved? Because we have seen, especially as we do our creative audits across different organizations, that's the process that takes a lot of time, a lot of back and forth. So I'm very curious to know what's the secret sauce behind running a tight ship there.
Well, you and I could spend hours talking about this topic. I think maintaining brand equity is the main goal for any brand. Doesn't matter if you are luxury or mass. Everyone wants to maintain what's core to us, what's unique about what we do as a company in maintaining those pillars. In the high end of luxury, that's much more controlled approach. Take an example of any of the fashion houses. They will make sure that at every touch point the consumer is having the same experience. More prestige brands sometimes don't have the same luxury. They will need to play much more into the lower funnel, allowing their markets and their regions to do local relevancy in a different way. I would say the role then of a global brand is to make sure it's updating its strategy accordingly. It's creating more and more toolkits and guardrails that when local markets want to activate campaigns, they know where to play. They know where the sandbox is. Can they
Okay.
explore? Yes, they can, but they should know what are the I call it the untouchables. What are really the brand cues that should never disappear? And that's the job of a CMO. That's the job of a chief creative officer. And that's the balance that we need to go between brand equity and commercialization.
Got it. So somewhere you're trying to build the guardrails globally, make sure that they have been established, they have been communicated, and then so that you're competitive in local markets, it's important to make sure they get a little bit of flexibility to kind of commercialize that content, but at the same time, they are true to the brand equity.
Yeah, and this changes. This changes over time. This changes brand by brand. You look at examples such as Nike, who is one of the most modern marketers in the world. They've done
Yeah,
sometimes more controlling, sometimes more decentralized. Uh, we are the same. The brands evolve with culture, and sometimes more control is necessary, and sometimes more decentralization is necessary.
I'm sure you run a tight ship, but there are always areas that we can improve. So I'm curious to know in your world, if you had to pick three priorities or say that, hey, these are the three things that keep me up at night, what would those look like?
First, I'll disagree with you. I do not run a tight ship. Whoever
Okay.
is saying that they do, they're lying.
Wow.
Creative operations is
That's quite an honest comment, Alexandra. I think we'll appreciate that. I mean, yeah, there are so many listeners going and saying that, okay, if you can be, openly saying that, definitely there are areas that we can improve. So that's amazing.
I think that's a term that is now very common. Is this idea of growth mindset, which is what I try
Okay.
to have every day.
Okay.
So there is always ways of making things better. Some
Yeah.
people believe if it's not broken, don't fix it. I actually believe that sometimes it's not going to be about fixing, sometimes it will be about reinventing. And I like to when I joined my current organization, I did a lot of innovation by changing all our systems to be digitized. At that time, people were still talking about job jackets for their projects. They were printing
Okay.
everything. They were having like those Excel printed. The entire creative work was being printed and brought to a CMO to sign off on that work. Those were pages and pages, and this is just 8 years ago. Of course, I created digitalized routing systems. I implemented digital tools such as Rike for managing our timelines. But I was also living in an era where I'm too dependent of manual updates, and I'm
Okay.
changing all of this right now. I am I'm working with a company called Airtable, which is I'm
Okay.
bringing all my systems to a database, so I'm able to read my data in a different way. How many projects did I work in a year? How long does it take? Which teams are faster than others? How many assets did I made? What is my cost per asset? Those were all business operations informations that helps me become a better creative operations leader that just 2 years ago I was doing everything on an Excel, and to run those reports, it will take me a long time. And I
Right.
want them to become my dashboard every day.
And I can also imagine having access to this data just means so much better capacity utilization, right? Because if you're running an ops engine, then there is so much from the perspective of just making sure the resources are deployed productively and you're actually being able to partner well with the business.
Absolutely.
Okay. And anything that at least is top of mind today that, hey, you know what, we need to, I think AI was one thing that you mentioned. What is the best use of AI and what are the best applications of it? Anything else comes to mind that, hey, these are things that I'd love to fix in my organizations, or these are things that keep me up at night?
I think the idea of smart ops is my drive. I
Okay.
don't want to be known in my organization as the person who run the timelines, but as the person who brings change for the business and impact others in a different way. Sometimes it's going to be about making better creative work. Sometimes it's going to be about establishing new ways of working. And I'm not using the word process on purpose because I cannot be governed by process. I need to be driven by what type of work generates growth for my company. And process is just an enabler of that. And in the last thing, which is normally where I start, is about people and how I am upskilling my creative team. How am I helping them to keep up with the technology and continue driving their excellence and also have a growth mindset? If I need to redo my process every year because I'm enabling growth from the business and from my creative team, that's the job. So my
Yeah.
job is not predefined.
Okay. Interesting. Wow, we covered a lot of ground, Alexandra, and I think we are almost at time. But before we leave, are there any tips and tricks you'd like to share? Any parting thoughts with our listeners?
I would say that something that I do have today, and I when I talk to other creative operations teams, they don't have, is I have a leadership that believes in the power of creative operations.
Okay.
So if you are listening and you are in the beginning of your career, or you are an executive at your company, make sure that you're connecting with your leaders in a way that they understand what your team does, what you do, what are you making. There is a lot of work that we do behind closed doors, and I don't think we're talking enough about our value. I try to do that every year where I'm proving the value of what I'm bringing that is not invisible. And if I'm proving my value, I am sitting on rooms that normally operations would not be invited to. And I'm now part of decision making in other areas of the company. So don't be shy about telling everybody else about the savings of efficiencies you have brought to the organization.
Amazing. So moving from operations to more business partnering, and for enabling that, having the right executive alignment. Lovely, Alexandra. This was a lovely, candid chat. Thank you for spilling the beans on some insider innovation on ops, and some of the candid answers you gave. I think they have been extremely helpful for me at least, and hopefully for our listeners as well. Thanks again so much for taking the time, and I hope we continue this chat.
Thank you, Karan. It was a true pleasure.